Welcome to Masterclass Wrestling with Class. Make sure to subscribe, like, and share. Today's guest, Quincy Elliott. Produced by Victoire. Sponsored by Clark's Nutrition and Natural Foods Market for all your supplements and organic food and produce needs. Sports fans, make your trip to the Coachella Valley and Palm Springs complete with a visit to Legends and Icons, an iconic sports bar. Hello, everybody, Victoire fans. Welcome back to another exciting episode of Victoire. And it is going to be exciting today because with me is a former NXT superstar. He is still a superstar in the making. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Quincy Elliott. Quincy, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. You come highly recommended to me from our mutual friend, Mr. Jesse Hernandez. So
love Jesse. Jesse forever.
Yeah. He's a wonderful, one of the best wrestling trainers, promoters, referees, you name it. He's been there, done it, and got the t-shirt.
Of course.
Before we begin today's broadcast, everybody, I will ask that you kindly subscribe, hit the subscribe button, notifications, ring that bell, do all that good stuff. It helps us put out these inspirational pieces so much further. But now back to the show with Quincy. So Quincy, you have quite the story already for a young man. You've been in NXT, so you've worked under the WWE contract. You were released, correct me if I'm wrong, it was 2021, correct?
2023, so a year ago.
Oh, 2023. So 2023, you were released. This was right around the merger between WWE and TKO, I believe that was correct.
Correct.
And of course, there are some, you've addressed some of the issues that you had with creative specifically. So we will go over that. But before we get to that stuff, let's find out who Quincy Elliott really is. Let's go back in time. Tell us about how you discovered professional wrestling and how you forged a way to start training and then to get yourself ultimately to NXT.
So wrestling kind of has been like in my life before I can even remember any other thought. My family, my mother specifically, loved pro wrestling.
Oh, wow.
Golden era, way before my time, really. So I kind of was born into loving professional wrestling, but I never really grew out of it. And I knew around 5 that I kind of wanted to do it.
Yeah.
Like I wanted that to be my thing. I didn't want to be a doctor or a lawyer or fireman or anything like that. I wanted to be a pro wrestler. So around 12 is when I started really just like taking it serious and wanting to do this thing. And I Googled every school in my area, just trying to figure out how to do this, and ultimately started training at 15.
Yeah, at 15. So that's pretty good that you had your direction and your focus. So your mom, she's let me get this straight. She's a pro wrestling fan. She hasn't been in the ring herself or anything, correct?
No, she's a fan, lifelong fan.
So she's a fan. So she did a good job because she introduced you, in my opinion, to the greatest era of all time, the golden era.
Definitely. Some of the best that came from that era, man.
Yep. Now you talk about creativity because I know that's very important to you, being creative with your character. That was one of the most creative eras of all time. Would you agree?
I agree. I mean, I don't think it will ever be topped.
No.
No matter how much we keep pushing the genre of wrestling forward, it was a different time.
It was a different time. So I've got to ask you, as a younger man, now when you watch pro wrestling, do you have an affinity? Do you prefer the golden era still over what you see today, or more so what you grew up with?
I mean, there's a lot of great people, wrestling today, and people that can do things that will blow your mind that people from back then probably physically couldn't do. Mm-hmm. But that authentic feeling, that every fan has.
Champions. They're not born in the gym. It starts from the inside and it works its way out. Do you feel it more difficult to obtain muscle? Are you tired or perhaps depressed? Then there's a solution. Our brand new partner and sponsor Care Aesthetics of La Quinta are here to help you get restored to optimal health. Just use the contact information in this video and schedule your free consultation. Be sure to mention the name of the podcast, whether that be Power and Glory, Styling, Masterclass, or Hey Roma, when doing so. We wish you all the best in your road to optimized health. And now, back to the show.
And people that can do things that will blow your mind that people from back then probably physically couldn't do.
Mm-hmm.
But that authentic feeling, that every fan has, watching this. I personally don't get that from wrestling anymore. Right. I know things have changed and the business has went way different in mentality and the way we take care of ourselves and things. But I just feel like back then there was just like the sense of disbelief,
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you on that. Now back to your story, Quincy, as we do little sidebars here, but back to your story. So I presume you went directly to Jesse's school out here in the Inland Empire in California.
Correct. I was 15 at the time when I first started there. Totally blind to the idea of what I was actually getting myself into. But I just, the passion in me didn't quit. It was very rough in the beginning for me, physically and stuff, like just getting used to pro wrestling, but I stayed persistent. Yeah. And Jesse was always very encouraging to that. Mm-hmm. And, I used to drive down to the school. I lived an hour and 30 minutes away, but I would be there every week soaking up as much knowledge as I can.
Wow.
While trying to finish high school at the same time.
Yeah. Gosh, what an ambitious young man. An hour and a half. So where did you grow up? Where were you living at that time then?
I was living in Lancaster,
okay,
California, and Jesse's in San Bernardino, California. So that's about a good hour and 30-minute drive. And my mom would drive me down twice a week.
Yeah.
To train with Jesse.
Yeah. Wow. What an incredible. Yeah, that's a lot of effort, a lot of work that goes into becoming a pro wrestler. And I think that's one of the things that, we love to share with viewers. It is, everyone says, well, so a lot of people say, oh, it's fake, it's this and that. There are many aspects that are not entirely fake about this business, and I would actually not use the word fake. And just so everybody knows, I'd say it's a tough business. It's a tough road for anybody to get into, but those who persevere typically get the reward in the end, much like you did. So, how long were you training with Jesse before people started recognizing your talent and before you got that opportunity to try out for WWE?
So before I was able to have matches with Jesse, I was training for around 3 years, I believe. At first, I was just a kid and didn't really understand things, and had to really learn the business. Mm-hmm. And then I started having matches of my own, and then within 3 years, I signed with WWE. So once I started on the indie grind, and then I kind of spread my wings a little bit away from Jesse, I just went everywhere I could to try to get my name out there, and soak as much knowledge as I can from every opportunity. Yeah. And then, I was able to work for Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, which kind of helped me. It was a brief moment, but it kind of helped me understand TV wrestling a little bit under Dave Marquez. And, once I got that tryout opportunity, the rest is history, I believe.
Yeah. Now, explain a little bit of a difference for the viewers who may not know the difference between independent pro wrestling, without the TV, without the cameras, as opposed to wrestling in front of a camera, if you will, some of the biggest differences.
I feel like one of the biggest things that people don't realize is that when you're wrestling on camera, or specifically, I would just say on WWE because it's a whole different machine, is that you have a set time to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish in that segment, and sometimes things get cut out, things get, misconstrued. You have to kind of be on your toes and expect the unexpected.
Yeah.
Whereas to wrestling on the indies, you kind of have a little more freedom to do what you want, and a lot more time to explain the stories you're trying to tell.
Yeah. Now, how do you do that? Is it just like a sensory perception of what's going on? Like if you say you've got 8 minutes for a match, do you kind of know? Can you kind of get used to it eventually? Like you've done it so many times, what 8 minutes feels like? Or is the referee, giving you instruction?
Um, Typically, if it's a good referee, because I've dealt with a lot that aren't very good, but if it's a good referee, they kind of have a great sense of time, and that job in itself is hard trying to keep track of time while also being into the energy that's going on in front of you is a very tough job.
Yeah.
So you kind of rely on the wrestler. I mean, more independently, you could kind of feel
Mhm.
uh, when things are going a little too long, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense. Who were some of your heroes growing up before you started or while you were training?
Oh man, I had plenty. I looked up the first wrestler I ever fell in love with was Scotty 2 Hotty
Okay.
because um because of the entertainment that he just brought anytime I saw him on my screen. Then as I got older, I started falling in love with Shawn Michaels
Oh yeah.
and H.G. Styles, and those guys kind of inspired me. Um, People like Melina inspired me, who also trained at Jeff's school.
Yeah.
People like Awesome Kong inspired me.
Yeah.
And then as I started training, I knew that I didn't want to just be a bigger wrestler that just was, stereotypical.
Mhm.
So I started looking into more agile guys like Vader, Samoa Joe.
Mhm.
Um, Keith Lee was, making his name out in NXT. So a lot of mixture of a lot of things.
Yeah, yeah. So and so working on that, how did you work a lot on your conditioning, cardiovascular to be able to become, as agile and, moving around, with
Yeah,
the bigger say, yeah.
worked on it a bunch, man. It was a tough road, but I knew if I stayed persistent that I'd be able to do it.
Yeah.
And there's some things that I haven't been able to show the world that I can do, because you got to keep things in your back pocket
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah.
Because I've just like I never once put a limit on myself.
Hmm.
When I would train lucha at Jesse's, I would do everything that the smaller guys were doing.
Right.
Even if I was going to use it or not, I would try to have that in my arsenal just to say that I can do it.
Yeah, yeah. No, that makes sense. That's smart. How old are you right now, Quincy?
25.
Wow. Yeah, I've done all this already, and you're barely 25, man. You haven't even you would be close to peaking probably back in the golden era, about 30. Not anymore. Guys can go on a lot further now. What's Chris Jericho? He's let's see, 53, 54 now.
Yeah, man. I just watched Rey Mysterio last night, and I don't understand how he's able to still do those things he's doing.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. He's still able to. And speaking of that, being able to do things later, because there is a level of pain that does come into this equation. I mean, your joints, your neck, your back. Do you have any nagging issues from the time you've wrestled, or are you still good right now?
This summer I actually just got a physical therapy for a herniated disc that I was dealing with.
Uh-huh.
Things are much better now.
Yeah.
I'm much better now through physical therapy and injections and stuff. But it is definitely way tougher than people realize on your body because your body is essentially you're taxing your body anytime you get in that ring.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's taxing on the mind too with the travel. Did you experience any of the travel? I'm jumping ahead of ourselves, but I will come back. But when you
Mhm.
were with NXT, did you experience the heavier travel? How did you deal with that? Were you able to sleep enough? Those sorts of things?
I mean, it kind of got. I wouldn't say that it was as heavy as the main roster by any means, but when I first signed with NXT was during COVID. COVID was still a thing when I signed with NXT, so everything was more so in house.
Uh-huh.
But as months went on, they started adding more live events and house shows and things. So you are traveling every other weekend. You
Mm.
are training every week. So it is a lot of time and effort into what you're doing. But I'm sure a lot of people would like to be able to sleep in their beds that are on the main roster. So I ain't gonna complain about it. I was able to sleep in my own bed.
Oh, that's good, man. So you were 21 when you were signed.
Yes.
Wow, wow. What a good birthday present for you that year.
Yeah, it was. It was a great birthday present.
So tell us the road to getting there. So you were on the independents, you were trying to go, which is very smart. Anybody who is an aspiring pro wrestler, you have to be able to suck up knowledge, just like Quincy was saying there. He was wrestling in many places as he could, listening and paying attention. So you're on there. So what was the moment or where were you scouted? When did WWE contact you? How did that happen?
So they put out an article, or there was an article. I don't know if WWE specifically put out that WWE is doing tryouts in Vegas
Okay.
in 2021. And a friend of mine sent me the article. It was like, oh, you should sign up. And I was like, okay. So I signed up. I didn't think anything of it. I'm like, oh man, they're not gonna pick me. I know that was a terrible mindset to go into with it
Mhm.
at the time, but it was just so much. Like we were just returning from COVID with wrestling and everything, so my mindset wasn't I'm gonna get in WWE tomorrow. But I received an email from them for the tryout,
Mhm.
and I was actually on the flight going to a show in New York that I was doing, and so I was in airplane mode, and then I missed the email by 2 weeks,
Oh,
which was almost one of the worst decisions I could ever made. So check your emails if you're a wrestler. Make sure you always check your emails.
yeah.
But they were able to figure things out and still get me in there. So
Yeah.
I was blessed with that opportunity, and then showed up and showed out and caught their interest.
Wow, that's amazing. Now but you already were traveling. I mean, you were flying to New York. So uh that leads me to a question. Were you able to support yourself financially? I mean, was your mom still helping you out because you were still very young?
I
Did
When I first started the journey, my mom helped. I mean, my mom helped me out a lot. She will always help me until she has no breath in her body, and I'm forever grateful for her. But as I started doing more independent shows, I was managing that while working for security at the time. So it was tough because a lot of jobs want you to work on the weekends, and that's when wrestling runs.
yeah.
So I had a good paying job that was able to decently get me the things I needed to support my wrestling career. But it was tough because when you're first starting out wrestling, like a lot of people, you don't get paid much to do this when you first start out. It's kind of essentially uh you know if you're working 8 hours in a day and making $20.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's tough in the beginning, but as someone said to me, and it will come to me, who was it? It was actually TJ Perkins. And he said to me, imagine that someone's giving you a platform. You're like a vendor at a convention, and they're gifting you it for free. So you go out there and you put on the best show you can because you're showcasing to a captive audience that's been gifted to you. So if there are any wrestlers out there who do have a little bit of bitterness about performing for next to no money or sometimes no money on the independents. Just remember that. That was a nice word I got from TJ. So you went to the tryout, you got hired, well, you got brought into the tryout, they liked you and they brought you in. So what was the process? Did they offer you a contract right away?
No, I was actually in probably the most unique situation to ever exist at the time. I mean, it happens more, but at the time they offered me something called an extended tryout.
Okay.
So they had interest in me, but they offered everyone that they wanted to sign that day contract right there. But Triple H at the time told me that he saw a lot in me, and he wanted me to come down there and show them more of myself to really get their attention. So I went and I stayed at the Performance Center for a month, not under contract, but training every day like I was, with the guys, and I really, really caught their attention. And
Wow.
then they back home for a week, and then they offered me the job.
Oh, that's amazing, man. So that whole time you were there, they offered you lodging, but they didn't offer you financial remuneration.
No,
So you had to support yourself while you were there.
yeah, they gave me a stipend,
Okay.
and an Airbnb,
Wow.
but it was a rough month, and then they extended my stay there for another week so I can do my medical when I was there. So it was tough. I quit my job before I went there. I
Yeah.
quit my because I was like, this is a once in a lifetime
Yeah.
opportunity. I have to think on myself here.
Yeah. You have to take that risk. So you took that risk and it paid off. And if you don't mind me asking, so what did they bring you in at contract wise financially?
I don't want to state that on here.
Okay. All right. But it
Yeah,
was good.
it was good. Yeah, I'll tell you off camera.
Okay, all right, okay, okay. That's good, man. So they bring you in, so you're stoked, you're over the moon. I'm sure your mom is like beside herself at this point.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah, you're going to be on TV. So you go. So now I presume you got to move to Florida at this point.
Yes, yes. So they told me, they offered me the contract, I believe, at the beginning of November, and told me that I had to find up an apartment and move there by Thanksgiving or before Thanksgiving.
Wow, that's fast.
So yeah, that was very fast. So I had to find an apartment, uh, and all of that in 2 weeks. It was a really crazy transition in my life at the time.
Yeah. But what was it like meeting Triple H? Because now here's the guy who, at this point, sits atop the entire wrestling kingdom for now.
Mhm.
What was it like meeting him? I mean, was he everything you thought? Was he a nice guy? Did he seem genuine to you?
He was very genuine to me. And at the time, at the tryouts, there was 1 million great athletes, that were really going. And then there was me, this heavy set indie wrestler.
Hmm.
But I really caught his attention during the promo segment of the tryout,
Yeah.
and it's because I don't know what it was at the time. I just wasn't thinking that, oh, this is Triple H. This is someone that I grew up watching. I was thinking like, I have to show him who I am.
Yeah.
I can't be fascinated by who he is.
Yeah.
So I cut that promo, and I noticed a sparkle in his eye and a little smirk from
Yeah.
some of the things I was saying, and I was like, okay, I have his interest. And
Yeah.
throughout the tryout, he would come up to me and would tell me encouraging things like, keep going. If you make it to the end of this, there's going to be great things to happen for you. Like he was very. I have nothing but good things to say about Triple H.
Oh, that's amazing, man. That's good to hear that. And it's good to hear you had so much confidence in you. And it also proves a point that, you mentioned those who are perhaps athletic, like Olympic style, athletes, but you were a character and you brought that out in your promos. And that's, again, going back to the golden era, that's something that I think needs to come back in wrestling today. We need
I
more.
wholeheartedly agree. I
We
agree.
we need more characters, more people to look distinctly different from each other. Because back then, you could tell the big boss man from Repo Man, from the Ultimate Warrior to the Macho Man. Nowadays, not to knock anyone's in-ring talent, but a lot of the guys are starting to look the same beard, same hair, same costume, same piece on the mic. So I'm happy to hear that you were one of these new characters, and you will be a new character because, like I said, you're back in full swing of things now. And we'll get to that point later, though. So you're under training. You're now in Florida, and you're at the Performance Center. How long did it take for you to start debuting on TV?
Um, Honestly, they start using me in like segments and stuff very quickly. But at the time, uh, I got concussed and I was out for a couple weeks.
Hmm.
Um, so that kind of put a little pause on things. But I made my debut very quickly. They were throwing people on TV very quickly at the time. So within 3 months, I believe, is when I had my first match.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about the concussion? Because obviously that's can be a very serious, fatal matter. So for some people who may not know, um, so you get concussed. How do you know you're concussed? What feelings, what happens to you? Again, I've never been concussed, so I don't know. Explain that to someone so they can know if they ever do get injured.
So I had a match at the time, a training match. Well, they used to have like in-house live events where the talent would be the crowd and the wrestlers would perform, just to get advice and stuff from coaches. But I
Yeah.
had a match at the time and things went south or whatever.
Hmm.
And afterwards I was walking upstairs and I just didn't feel right. I felt dizzy and felt sick. And then I sat down at the time in the locker room, and one of my friends were like, "Bro, are you all right?" I'm like, "I think I'm okay," but I just didn't feel right, and I was very dizzy.
Hmm.
So, and I didn't remember much from the match. And then
Hmm.
I went to see medical, and they said, "Yeah, like you have every symptom that there is for a concussion." So,
Yeah.
they took the safety protocol, and it's a tough road, but I feel like it happened. It's something that happens. You just got to really just get through it. But it's not something that you really can explain because I don't really remember a lot from when it actually happened.
Okay. Okay. So just a sense of strange feeling, perhaps dizziness, so just not being all there would be a
Yeah.
symptom, like after you get hit in the head. Okay, so it's a good thing to remember, viewers. So you're there, so you're on TV. So now this is it. Now you're walking out. You've got those. I was going to say flash bulbs. We don't have them anymore, but you've got the lasers. You've got the spotlights. You're there now.
Mm-hmm.
So, what was it like for you that very first night, if you can recall? I'm sure you can. Nervous, anxious? How were you feeling that night?
I was, oh man, honestly, I don't remember. I'm sure I was nervous. I get nervous before every performance.
Yeah.
Um, no matter where I'm at. But I'm sure I was nervous, but it was just more so like, I this is my opportunity to show the world who I am.
Yeah.
You know, and that's all that was going through my head. Show the world who I am. Show the world who I am, and then, I really aced that first opportunity. Like
Yeah.
you only get one first impression, and I had people talking about me from that moment. So
Yeah.
I really, really, really am proud of myself for that one.
Yeah. Well, you've created quite the sensation. Like I said, there's other topics we'll get to after because, yeah, you did make a big impression. It's very quick for such a young man. So now you're on the main, well, not the main roster. You're on an NXT roster. Who are some of your friends? Who are some of those that you can really trust when you're there now?
Um, Man, I had a lot of friends. One of my closest friends is Idris and No Thing, who's still there right now. Really good dude. I was pretty much colleagues with a lot of people. We were all so young at the time,
Yeah.
so and this is such a big opportunity. So like, you know, everyone would kind of see everyone really. Like we would go out and like and get to know each other. Um, I'm proud of what a lot of people have accomplished. There's a lot of people that I started with. They're on the main roster now. Killing it and things. But like, um, a lot I guess you could say it was like seeing babies grow up in a way in a
Yeah.
very fast time. Because we're
Yeah.
all 21, 22, 23. Like we don't know anything about the world really besides the fact that we got this opportunity. So, there was a lot of people that I got very close to. I can't list them all, but,
Yeah.
um, grateful for the people I met there.
Was your mom there the first night?
No, she wasn't.
Okay. Yeah. And who did they ever teach you? Because you mentioned being so young. Was there anyone in the performance center that particularly pulled you guys aside to teach you life lessons? Like, okay, this is how you, yeah, I mean, just, standard, like balance a checkbook. This is how you do this. This is how you, was there anyone helping you with the technical stuff being so young that you may not have known?
No, for me personally, my story is unique because I moved there so fast,
Mhm.
and when my group that I trained with or tried out with in Vegas uh moved to Florida, I was in California getting my things ready to go. So I never had the financial classes and all of that till like oddly the last year I was there,
Okay.
and I already made my bad decisions here and there. So I never really got to get that. But they have people there. But particularly for myself, I feel like if I had a better guidance in that direction, I probably could have made some better choices.
Okay. All right. And speaking of better choices, we'll dive in and out of this subject because the Netflix special Vince McMahon came out last week. It's the talk of the wrestling world, and it will be all the way until that trial happens later this year, I think, or early next year. Now you mentioned like a sort of like a strict regimen. So while you were in training at the Performance Center, were you guys supervised, scrutinized? So like you said, you went out. But were there curfews and things like that? Did they try and monitor you? Because I'm saying this because obviously in the documentary with Vince McMahon in the 80s and 90s, people were running wild outside of
Uh,
wrestling.
there weren't curfews and things of that nature because we were all adults, but there was definitely when I first started, it was way different than
Mhm.
my last few months there. When I first started, there was definitely a heavy, um, I guess you could say, a heavy feeling of walking on eggshells, hoping you're not going to get fired because of everything that was going on.
Yeah.
And they would hire people for anything at the time, for nothing most of the time. But um, budget cuts were a big thing, and I remember I sat through a few of them myself before I was ultimately released. Where it's just like, oh man, who's it going to be? This person got released. That person got released. And I mean, a lot of them have been brought back, but like it was a lot of unjustified, I
Hmm.
would say, at
Hmm.
the time from
Hmm.
people that actually had a lot of potential and actually brought a lot to the game. But it was a weird time for me because it worked out in my favor because they changed the way NXT was, and I
Hmm.
don't necessarily know if I would have had that opportunity if NXT didn't change because of all of that. But it definitely was like a sense of, oh, we don't know what's going on, like
Hmm.
uh, it always had that feeling of no one really knew what was going on. At one moment, Vince is in charge. The next moment, he's not in charge.
Yeah.
One moment, it was just a lot of like confusion for a
Yeah.
lot of people.
Yeah, it sounds like to me that there was a little bit of perhaps this deal was already being put together. I mean, these things don't happen overnight. So
Hmm.
this could have been in the works for 2, 3 years, maybe 4 or 5 years. We don't know. But what were some of the highlights for you then in NXT? Some of the feuds, some of the moments that stand out to you where you really felt content with what you'd done out there, storylines, things like that.
Well, I had a match on Level Up against Zion Quinn. NXT Level Up, which is like their secondary show that they had to, give opportunities to newer people, and it was just pretty much, live TV practice. And at the time, I was driving a moped, like it was like my actual moped that I traveled with
Okay.
from the performance center to home. And I don't know exactly whose idea it was, but I remember at the time they were like, "Oh, we want you to come out on that for your entrance." And I was like, "Oh, okay, like all right, like if that's what you want, that's what I'll do." But I wasn't announced for the match with Zion Quinn, and the crowd just was so behind me at the time because I guess what I was presenting was so different, and they were really into it, and they didn't expect that it was going to be me to come out, but
Hmm.
they were chanting for me when he had his little open challenge, and
Hmm.
I came out on the moped to an absolutely insane reaction, and
Yeah.
I remember after that match, the head writer of NXT came up to me and was like, "Oh, you're going to be on NXT." In the next 2 weeks, like start thinking of your vignette ideas and all of that. Now it just happened so fast, but it was validating for me that all of the hard work I was doing was worth
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Now you mentioned vignettes. You mentioned a writer coming up telling you to think about what you were going to do creatively. So how much how much wiggle room did you guys have creatively at that point in your careers? Were you given a gimmick, a look, or were you given the freedom to say, I want to do this, I want to add that, I want to remove this? I'll let you.
I don't. For me, it's weird for myself because I was always told just go out there and be yourself. The people love you. Just go out there and be you. If it's too much, we'll reel you back. But then as I started getting on the actual show, I felt like, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity, but I felt like the communication of what they wanted from me versus what I wanted it to be versus what was presented was kind of off.
Mhm.
And I know that the character was very controversial and different
Mhm.
to what wrestling used to seem, but I never wanted it to be a mockery of people like that. I
Right.
always wanted it to represent power and make people feel inspired by seeing what they saw on that television screen.
Yeah.
But sometimes I felt like, some of the things that I was asked to do or some of the things that I did kind of was offensive a little bit. It wasn't too much over the top, but I could have communicated better, but I was just trying to, make use of the opportunity I had at the time
Mhm.
and not ruin that. But I feel like in terms of writing and stuff, I feel like some of the stuff that if we would have collaborated a little better or there
Mhm.
was more communication, I think it would have been better for me
Yeah.
in them in the long run.
Yeah, because you played, didn't you play a little bit more like of an Adrian Street when Rico became, a little bit more flamboyant? You wore makeup and stuff like that, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
very very flamboyant character, and I mean those people you mentioned were great at the time, but the world's changed so much since then. You
Yeah.
know, the world's changed a whole lot since then. Everyone's offended at everything these days, and you
Yeah.
gotta. I feel like you really, 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 when you're presenting a character like that, you really, really, really have to really hone in and think of what you're doing. How does this make people feel? And I feel like sometimes those things weren't uh the situation at the time, and I just didn't want to offend people.
Right, right. So you think that somewhere along the lines, because obviously you were very vocal when you did get released from WWE, that was during the TKO merger with WWE and William Morris out here in California. You were vocal about the frustrations with creative, and you've been public about that, and it's, very glad that you were. Um, since that time that you've had to reflect upon that situation. Do you feel that you handled that correctly, or do you still feel you feel that you could have handled it differently? The day
I,
you were.
I, there's a lot of things I could have handled differently at the time, to be honest with you. But I'm not the one that makes excuses. But I was immature. I was in this new world, new state, meeting new people, not really living on my own, not really understanding the opportunity that was there. I feel
Mhm.
like I made most of the physical part of it, but the mental part of it, I didn't necessarily have anyone to really understand what I was going through because I was going through it myself. I really couldn't turn to anyone and
Yeah.
talk to them about it. But I have no hard feelings towards that.
Mhm.
At the end of the day, I will forever be WWE alumni.
Mhm.
And if you tell 5 year old me that, I could be happy with that. But I definitely feel like if I had more of an opportunity or more of like, mentorship in those elements, I would have definitely been way better with the decisions I made.
And I think it's only fair, I will defend you in this. 21, 22, 23, you're 10 years removed from being 12 years old. I mean, someone of that age does need some guidance, especially when they get a big contract and they're on television. You cannot expect someone of just younger than you are now, someone of that age to comprehend everything because the world, like I said, they usually say when you're about 30, you've had quite a few experiences. By 30, you've been roughed up a little bit, so you can handle things a little better. But 21, yeah, I can only imagine it must have been an exorbitant amount of pressure on you at the time. Um, of course, I think that your career is just starting. I think that, like you said, you are officially WWE alumni. No one's ever going to take that from you. You've got the experience, you've got the knowledge. Now you're maturing. It's just a matter of time before you come back. Speaking of comeback, we'll jump around a little bit more. AEW. Now, have you reached out to AEW since your WWE release?
I wouldn't. I mean, I'm sure that they're aware of who I am.
Mhm.
You know, um, any smart business person would be aware. If they're aware of others that were released at the time, I'm sure they're aware of who I am. I personally will wrestle anywhere in the world if I can. Because that's just how I am. Because I love professional wrestling. But I'm not dying to knock down that door, or
Yeah.
just because I wouldn't want to go to AEW and just become another student at the lunch table. I would like to be serving the food a little bit and
Yeah.
get a little opportunity. So I'm not too triggered by that at all. If it happens, it happens. But right now, me personally, more so, I'm trying to wrestle internationally.
Yeah.
Like I want to go travel the world and see different cultures and how they perceive the sport that we do.
Mhm.
So that's more so where I am. I want to make my name globally.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's very smart. You seem very smart. So, and I must ask, because you were involved in wrestling so much, did you get a chance to go to college? Because I know you
No,
started. Okay, you
I
didn't.
didn't. I didn't. It was never in my plans at all. One of my biggest I was gonna start going to college when I was in NXT, but just the time because I wanted to always have a backup plan, but just the time consuming of training and performing, I just didn't have it. But no, I never went to college. I never really wanted to do anything else.
Mhm.
I know that sounds crazy because at some point in life I'm going to have to do something else, but um that's just always what I wanted to do. I was always laser focused on that goal, and it happened much quicker than I expected.
Yeah. But I think you've said something there that it needs to be. Sometimes in life, some people want something and it seems to come to them relatively easily, but that's their path. That's the path God gave them. Others, it's there, the seed's planted, but they have to fight for it. And in order to fight for it, you do have to be laser focused, like you said. I mean, you're living proof of that. You were laser focused, and look where you got. And you were very young. You accomplished more than what a lot of some people would fight a lifetime, to accomplish in whatever field they want to accomplish. So you did very, very well. Um, Going back to the WWE thing, because I want to ask your opinion. So TKO comes in 2023, right before you get your release, and we'll talk more about your release. What were your thoughts on Hollywood coming in and merging with pro wrestling? Did you like that?
I personally, as a fan, I liked it. As a performer, obviously I didn't. But I think it was a very smart move.
Mhm.
I think it was very progressive for the industry. I feel like the industry is much better now in this moment that we're talking than it was a year ago.
Yeah.
So ultimately it benefited people, but I feel like the way that it happened could have been much better, you know?
Yeah, yeah. So, but that time when that merger occurred, they were making cuts again. That's when you were released from the company. Did they give you
Correct.
any other reason, or did they just say budgetary cuts, you're released?
Budgetary cuts to my release, but honestly, I kind of expected it, if that makes sense. And it was kind of it was obviously you know, hurtful and it sucked and that was my dream and that's all I ever wanted to do. But, you know, the mentality I was in at the time and all the things I was going through with the company, I was just like, you know, like I need this. I felt like in a way it was them cutting loose with me and
Mhm.
saying, go mature, go show us, you know, that we didn't make a mistake. I
Yeah.
mean that we made mistakes. I'm sorry about that. About releasing you. But, you know, just the way that they went about everything with that was just it was just like, you know, not morally okay. But who cares what I have to think on that aspect, really, right?
Yeah, well, you do, you make it, we do care about your thoughts and your opinions, and that's another reason why I wanted to do this because there's some other, some articles that were put out about your release at that time from some notable wrestling publications from around the world. One of them was pretty much saying that they were painting you to be a troublemaker backstage. So I mean, from what I've known of you already. Quincy, you don't seem to me to be a troublemaker. You seem to be just a passionate man. So debunk that for those for that negative article that I saw out there.
Well, there was a lot of Twitter drama that went down at the time, which I mean, Twitter is a world of its own, and I was very connected with it. But you know, I was just building a community of fans to get behind me, really, you know, to
Yeah.
keep the company seeing the interest.
Yeah.
But this narrative, I guess, that I was a headache backstage is just funny to me because, you know, I never once uh dealt with that. I never once was approached with that, really. You know, the Twitter stuff was addressed with me, and when they realized that, you know, it was what it was, they kept using me on television. I
Right.
was never a headache to deal with. I feel like if I was such a headache for the company, wouldn't they have released me much sooner? You know,
Exactly.
why would they keep me around for a whole year and,
Yeah.
you know, and release me? I feel like, you know, if there was any truth to that, you know, I'm here to kill it right now. But, you know, I have no ill will towards anyone. But I just feel like with wrestling articles sometimes and these people that think they know everything, they really don't know everything. And
Right.
I never really addressed it because, you know, obviously I'm not fully happy with everything. And it wasn't all peaches and roses when I was in WWE. There's things that I didn't like, but I'm not here to bury anyone
No.
specifically. I'm not here to do anything like that. But to say I was a headache for a company but not state what was the headache was is just insane to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I wanted to clear that up because I don't like it when they publish articles like that and they try and brandish you with something that's incorrect. We're getting to the bottom of it today. You're getting to share your story today. How
And
it
I feel like a lot of that, and I had never liked using these cards, but I feel like a lot of that is so believable for people because they see my character was flamboyant, and you know I'm a black male, and I feel like it's just like, you know, it's very easy to put a label like that onto me, you
yeah.
know, I'm not someone that makes excuses, you know. If I wasn't perfect, I was definitely immature, but to say I was a headache for the company when I wasn't even, you know, I was in developmental, so how was I a headache for the company?
Exactly. I mean, here's Triple H bringing you in, giving you this opportunity, seeing something in you. That doesn't make sense to me. How can you be a headache? Maybe they say that because, about like the creative aspect. But then again, I mean, aren't you entitled to your opinions? It's you. You're the guy going out there to perform. You're the guy who's going to portray this to the whole world. You got to have some input in what you're doing, you know?
I never once told the company no for anything.
There
I
you go.
did whatever I was told, and I was at every live event, even if I wasn't performing from a live event. I was at every training. I was never late to training. I,
Mhm.
I did everything that was asked of me from WWE and the coaches. So I mean, you know, people are gonna believe what they want to believe. I'm not gonna lose sleep about it. But I remember when that article came out at the time, I was just like who's reporting these things? You know, like if what it just state what the headache is. You know, if I was such a headache for WWE, that's just where I'm the hill I'm gonna die on.
Yeah.
Why wait until a merger to fire me? You know, I wasn't like John Cena. They could have cut their ties with me anytime.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm glad we got to go through that one. One of the things, you are a great talker. You said something a little bit earlier there that was very witty, and I wanted to know, how did you develop that skill? Was that something you had to practice, or is it organic for you?
Honestly, it comes from a lot of inspiration. Um, I'm a big fan of hip hop, and hip hop is witty. So I listen to a lot of hip hop, but when I was my style of wrestling, the things that I love in wrestling was always the promos, the Jake the Snakes, the Stone Colds, the CM Punks, the Dolph Zigglers. Those are just a few people that always stuck out to me because
Yeah.
I feel like I was able to connect to what they were saying versus what they were doing.
Mhm.
Because there's 1 million matches in the world of wrestling. You can search up anything on YouTube and find wrestling, but can you really connect to it? And
Yeah.
I always wanted to be that for wrestling. I wanted to be someone that was able to speak and connect with people because I feel like that lasts way longer than a match will ever
Man, you're getting to the top of my list, Quincy. I like you, brother. I like this man.
Thank you.
This man's got his head on right. That's what pro wrestling is. It's about connecting to a character. I can't tell you the amount of legends that I've spoken to, Quincy, have said the same thing as you. It's one thing to do flips and jump around and, like you said, a million matches and who's who. I can't even tell which one's, the good guy from the bad guy. Why do I care? It's the promos, it's the characters that make you care. And those are the things that make people remember, so that, individuals like you, hopefully in 20, 30 years from now, they'll still be able to say, oh, yeah, remember Quincy Elliott and what he did here? Much like when we can go back and talk about what the Macho Man did, or Steve Austin, or characters like that. So, yeah, it's important. And, the promo and being able to speak does convey and make a better connection to a character, rather than just doing flips and moves. So that's definitely good to know about, the direction you're going. So since NXT, what happened after? Now, were you able to immediately go into independent bookings, or did you have to go and find work? How have you readjusted after that?
Honestly, it was a big crazy adjustment for me because I was all over the place mentally. The first thing that I really had to figure out is if I wanted to do this anymore. You
Mhm.
know, I got to where I wanted to get to. Things ended, but I'm like, is this for me anymore? So I struggled with that for a few months. I was staying in Florida. I wasn't leaving my room much. I did a couple signings here and there, but I
Yeah.
was just, really, really in a depressive state at first,
Mhm.
just feeling awful because I'm just like, I never wanted that journey to end,
Yeah.
and I didn't have the answers to what I needed to do. But ultimately, I moved back to California. At first, I went to Germany,
Mhm.
spent a month in Europe. I met some cool people down there. Got to train at WXW down there. I got to work for them, and I got to work for Pro Wrestling Holland, which is in the Netherlands. And really just that really opened up my mind that there's more to wrestling than what I just think it is.
Mhm.
And I got to do that. Moved back to California, reconnected with Jesse a little bit. Went back to my roots, started training, and just got my head on straight.
Mhm.
I needed to get that passion back because I
Mhm.
was struggling with it a little bit. But now the goal is just you I grinded to get to WWE. I have a name for myself now. It now to me it's just about proving why I deserve to be on television anywhere again.
Yeah.
And if that comes from gritting my teeth and doing indie shows, I have no problem doing that. I did it in the past, so
Mhm.
it's just about rediscovering myself.
Yeah. So have you done any indie shows in and around California since you've been back?
I have not.
Okay.
I have not performed in California since I've been back. It's something that I want to do. I have some things coming up that are out of California
Okay.
in the next couple months. It's definitely gonna happen at some point, I'm sure. But
Mhm.
right now, I'm just focused on just making my name known everywhere that
Yeah.
isn't on television.
Now, when you do make your comeback, will you be the Quincy Elliott that we remember, or are you going to repackage yourself into a new character?
That's a great question. I believe if I ever go back to WWE, you have to evolve. All of the greats have always evolved to some degree. You mentioned Chris Jericho earlier. He was always constantly evolving. You have to evolve because the game, if you don't evolve, the game will evolve past you. So
Mhm.
definitely will be different. I always want to keep the elements of my character, um, the over the topness that we love from pro wrestling. Whatever I do, I want it to be over the top and in your face. And I want you to have to consume who I am and not just turn the TV on and look at your phone while
Yeah.
I'm performing.
Yeah.
So whatever I do is going to be over the top. It's going to catch attention.
Okay. All right. Good. And so, but right now you're training on a regular basis again. So
Yes,
back in the ring. Okay. All right.
I have a
Wonderful.
couple. I'm doing a little tour of Texas next month or
Oh.
this month. It's October already.
Oh, wow.
Uh, tour of Texas. So I'll be there for 4 weeks, and in November I have something really cool coming up, but I can't say yet
Okay.
on here, unfortunately. But I'm really happy with where things are going.
Okay. Well, that's fantastic. So presumably you've able to support yourself. You financially, have you gone back, have you taken another day job, or are you in a position where you don't have to right now?
I haven't, but if I have to, I will.
Okay.
I've always been a hustler. I've been raised around hustlers, so I will never struggle. And even if I do struggle, I'll find a way to get out. But the last year for me was getting my mindset back together.
Yeah.
Figuring out what I want, figuring out what I need, because I wasn't all the way okay with myself after that. It was pretty traumatizing to lose your dream job.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something that now you can share and you can give back as a young man because we have an audience here. So advice for somebody. Maybe it's not pro wrestling. Maybe they lost something. Maybe a parent, someone, God forbid, passed or something like that, or they were hurt. Any advice you can give someone who's dealing with that mental depression that you were talking about, maybe anxiety, something that you learned to get you through it?
What really, really helped me was don't isolate yourself from those that want to help. You know, there's people out there that want to help you. I know sometimes it may not seem like it, and you don't want to be a bother to people. Don't isolate yourself from it, and also don't mask it or try to you know numb it with stuff because I definitely dabbled in substances. I'm sober now,
Mm.
here and there. And people dabble in different things, whether that's fast food, women, porn, all of these things. I don't mask it, face it head on. It's okay to not be okay, really.
Mhm.
And eventually, with time, everything heals,
Mhm.
and and you're important, I guess. And those are things that I really had to learn this past year.
Mhm.
That just because something seems bad right now doesn't mean that it won't be. And I guess when you stay connected to God, really, there's nothing you can't accomplish or get to.
Okay, well, that's where I was going next because you can see what's hanging around my neck, sir.
Yes,
And I love our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and He's the reason why I'm here, why I'm doing what I'm doing. He's given me a great opportunity. I'm thankful every day I wake up. So God is very important to your life too.
yes, I definitely was struggling with God, and I mean, I wasn't trying to name drop or anything, but I have a friend, a buddy in NXT, Nathan Frazier. I believe he's NXT Tag Team Champions right now, and he knew that I was going through a lot at the time while I was still there,
Mm.
and he helped me out. He helped me get closer to God. He helped me realize that no matter what I do, no matter what journey I'm on, I'm nothing without God,
Mhm.
and God is our creator. And it was something that was a struggle for me for a long time. I was blinded by everything that I was going through. I wasn't really connected to God like I should have been.
Yeah.
But we're nothing without God, man. And
Yep.
I'm not gonna sit here and make it seem like I'm perfect and
Mhm.
I don't sin. I definitely have my moments, but it's all about staying close to God no matter where you are.
Yep, yep. He's the director, and God is just he's everything, and it's just a what a blessing. You have got great things coming in your future, Quincy. I see as a man of faith who's I've had my faith now for quite some time, and I can see how God worked in your life, and He's managed to pull you through it. But the wisdom that you've gained from it is remarkable for someone your age. And now you're able to give back and help people, just like you did there when you talked about depression and getting through things like that. That's an experience now that you can go on and share with others and help others who are going through that. So I think it's only going to get a lot better second time around when you get back on that international platform. And I, for one, am rooting for you. I just pray that it goes smoothly, all your next upcoming bookings, and that you catch their eye again. The former, the you know, young boy child phase is gone, and now you're the man that they were looking for originally.
Definitely. I appreciate that very much.
Yeah, absolutely, brother. So, Quincy, one last question I ask everybody. In your opinion, what is the meaning of life?
That's a great question. I
Mhm.
need like 5 seconds to really. I think the meaning of life is legacy.
Okay.
Um, I think whether that's having a kid and reproducing, and some people can't do that, but
Mhm.
I think it's leaving a connection with those that you've met in this life, and leaving a positive influence, because someday we're not going to be here, and
Yeah.
all we're going to be is a memory. And I feel like that's truly the meaning to life. You're going to have your ups and downs and stuff, but I think leaving a legacy and leaving behind something that can be meaningful in life, and that could be anything. You don't have to be a celebrity or a wrestler, or you could literally just be a normal person. If you can make change or make positivity in someone's life, you've lived a great life.
Yeah. What a great response. As you were saying that, I thought about it and I said, yeah, that's exactly what I've been through, in the past year or so. It's just understanding that, you know, we have to work to reach, like I said, some people have it through their children. They raise their children. That's they're passing along a legacy, as it were. Some people, they could be a manager of a business and they pass it along to their employees. But we all have, I think that's one of the most important things as well. So that's incredible. What a great answer. Thank you, Quincy, for that. And
Thank
then
you.
is there anything else you want to take the platform for? I'll give you a few minutes. Is there something else you want to promote, talk about that's on your mind?
No, just stay tuned to what I'm gonna do. I know I've been very quiet. I just been, getting my stuff together, dealing with myself, healing from everything that I went through. But stay tuned. I'm back at it. Shows coming up. Just check my social media. You'll see I'm gonna be doing a lot of great creative things in the next year, and hopefully for the rest of my life. But no, just I will hope everyone stays safe, and hopefully everyone learns. If it's one thing you could take from this, thank you for listening.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And thank you for sharing. That was most important. It wouldn't have happened without you. So please also give me your social media handles so then I can put them in the link of the description of the video. So anybody who wants to go and continue following Quincy Elliott's journey, you can click on the link in the description of this video. And but for now, everybody, Quincy, I have a feeling you're going to be back on this channel. I'm going to bring you back on some other shows to let you, have some other exposure here. But until next time, everybody, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Hit those notifications, those bell icons, and all that. Subscribe and keep tuned with what we've got going on here at Victoire. This was an absolute pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, this was Quincy Elliott, rising star in the world of professional wrestling. Thank you so much for taking the time, sir.
Thank you so much for having me, man.
Absolutely. All right. Stay on the line. I'll just say goodbye to the viewers. Take care, everybody. Victor what you must victor in your life. I have been Emir, and this is Quincy Elliott. Until next time.